Hi friends, I welcome you all here at TNB Academy. In this session, we are going to talk about the Clause 8.2 Business Impact Analysis and Risk Assessment of an International Standard ISO IEC 22301 2019 Security and Resilience Business Continuity Management Systems. In this session, we shall cover all the requirements of Clause 8.2 Business Impact Analysis and Risk Assessment in detail. This clause 8.2 has further three subclauses which are 8.2.1 General, 8.2.2 Business Impact, and 8.2.3 Risk Assessment. In this session, we shall discuss about all these three subclauses in detail. Now, as the requirements of the clause 8.2 depend upon the requirements of clause 6.1, I would like to recommend you referring this clause of ISO 22301 2019 also for better understanding of clause 8.2. It is also recommended to refer an external standard ISO 31000 which addresses the process for risk assessment. Now coming to the mandatory documents. According to the clause 8.2, organization is required to prepare and maintain the risk and opportunity register to meet out the requirements of the standard. Organization can also maintain management approaches review records, however not mandatory according to this standard. Now, let's discuss about the outcome of this session. After completing this session, you will be enabled to understand and verify the implementation of the requirement of clause 8.2 of the ISO 22301 2019. You will learn about determining risk and opportunities, preventing undesired effects, the actions to address risk and opportunities, and planning for integrating and implementing the actions into business continuity management system processes. You will also be enabled to evaluate the effectiveness of such actions as well. Now, let me simply read and explain the requirements of the subclause 8.2.1 General of the standard ISO 22301 2019. This subclause 8.2.1 General states the organization shall, point number A, implement and maintain systematic processes for analyzing the business impact and assessing the risk of disruption. Point number B, review the business impact analysis and risk assessment at planned intervals and when there are significant changes within the organization or the context in which it operates. Clause says under note, the organization determines the order in which the business impact analysis and risk assessment are conducted. Now, coming to the explanation part of this subclause 8.2.1. This subclause 8.2.1 states that when planning for the business continuity management system, the organization should consider the issues referred to in understanding the organization and its context as specified under clause 4.1 and the requirements referred to in understanding the needs and expectations of interested parties as specified under clause 4.2 and determine the risks and opportunities that need to be addressed to give assurance that the business continuity management system can achieve its intended results, preventing or reducing undesired effects and achieving continual improvement. According to subclause 8.2.1, the organization should implement and maintain systematic processes for analyzing the business impact and assessing the risks of disruption. The organization should review the business impact analysis and risk assessment at planned interval. Clause 8.2.1 also specifies that the organization should also review the business impact analysis when there are significant changes are done within the organization or the context in which the organization operates. Coming to the subclause 8.2.2, the business impact analysis now. The subclause 8.2.2 states that the organization shall use the process for analyzing business impact to determine business opportunity priorities and requirements. The process shall, point number A, define the impact types and criteria relevant to the organization's context. Point number B, identify the activities that support the provision of products and services. Point number 3, use the impact types and criteria for assessing the impacts over time resulting from the disruption of these activities. Point number 4, identify the time frame within which the impacts of not resuming activities would become unacceptable to the organization. Under this clause, Note 1 says this time frame can be referred to as the maximum tolerable period of disruption, or in short, MTPD. Next point is set prioritized time frames within the time identified in point number D for resuming disrupted activities at a specified minimum acceptable capacity. Note 2 under this subclause says this time frame can be referred to as the recovery time objective, or in short, RTO. Next point is use this analysis to identify prioritized activities, determine which resources are needed to support prioritized activities. Next point is determine the dependencies, including partners and suppliers, and interdependencies of the prioritized activities. Now let me explain this subclause 8.2.2. Subclause 8.2.2 states that the organization should use the process for analyzing business impacts to determine business continuity priorities and requirements. The process should define the types of impact and criteria relevant to the context of the organization as specified under clause 4.1 of this standard. As per subclause 8.2.2, process should identify the activities that support the provision of products and services and should use the impact types and criteria for assessing the impacts over time resulting from the disruption of these activities. Subclause 8.2.2 specifies that process should identify the time frame within which the impacts of not resuming activities would become unacceptable to the organization. It is mentioned in subclause 8.2.2 under note 1 that this time frame can be referred to as MTPD, or maximum tolerable period of disruption. The process should set prioritized time frames within the time identified under point number G for resuming disrupted activities at a specified minimum acceptable capacity. Under note 2, it is specified that this time frame can be referred to as the RTO, or recovery time objective. Subclause 8.2.2 also says that the process should use this analysis to identify prioritized activities and determine which resources are needed to support these prioritized activities. It should also be used to determine the dependencies, including partners and suppliers, and interdependencies on prioritized activities. Now let's talk about the subclause 8.2.3 risk assessment. Let me read the subclause 8.2.3 first. The organization shall implement and maintain a risk assessment process. Note, the process for risk assessment is addressed in ISO 31000. The organization shall, point number A, identify the risk of disruption to the organization's prioritized activities and to their required resources. Point number B, analyze and evaluate the identified risk. Point number C, determine which risk require treatment. Note, risk in the subclause relate to the disruption of business activities. Risk and opportunities related to the effectiveness of the management system are addressed in 6.1. Coming to the explanation part of this subclause 8.2.3. According to subclause 8.2.3, the organization must plan actions to address the risk and opportunities as determined in clause 6.1. The organization must also plan on how to integrate and implement the actions into its business continuity management system processes and evaluate the effectiveness of these actions. Actions taken to address risk and opportunities must be impartial to the possible impact on the conformity of products and services. Subclause 8.2.3 risk assessment specifies that the organization should implement and maintain a risk assessment process. Options to address risk can include, but not limited to, avoiding risk or taking the risk in order to pursue an opportunity, eliminating the risk source, changing the probability, sharing the risk, retaining risk by informed decision, or implementing standards like ISO 31000. Subclause 8.2.3 says that the organization should identify the risk of disruption to the organization's prioritized activities and to their required resources. Organizations should analyze and evaluate the identified risk and should determine which risk require treatment, wherein risk in the subclause relate to the disruption of business activities. Risk and opportunities related to the effectiveness of the management system are addressed in clause 6.1 of the standard. So it is recommended here to refer clause 6.1 for more information about it. When planning its BCMS or business continuity management system, the top management must implement and promote a culture of risk-based thinking throughout the organization to determine and address the risks and opportunities associated with providing assurance that the business continuity management system can achieve its intended results. The organization must integrate the actions to address these risks and opportunities into its BCMS processes using the PDCA cycle. Not all processes of a business continuity management system represent the same level of risk in terms of the organization's ability to meet its objectives, and the effects of uncertainty are not the same for all organizations. Each organization is therefore responsible for the extent it applies risk-based thinking and the actions it takes to address risk, including retaining documented information as evidence of its determination of risks. Planning must be periodically reviewed and updated as necessary when taking corrective actions or at management reviews. These actions must be proportional to the potential impact on the conformity of products and services. When planning its business continuity management system, the organization must consider the risks and opportunities presented by external and internal issues as well as the needs and expectations of interested parties. It should be relevant to its purpose and strategic direction. Risk management should be implemented at all levels of an organization, from the strategic to the operational level. The result of risk assessment should be considered in documenting the plans for process operation and risk control. So friends, this was a brief explanation of this subclause. We have discussed all three subclauses of clause 8.2 of the standard. And now let's talk about the non-conformity under this clause 8.2. You can see the auditor finding action report or a non-conformance report on screen for writing non-conformities under this clause. The sample NC report will give you an idea about how to write a non-conformist report. Please go through this and try to understand the various components of this non-conformist report. Now we have reached at the end of this session. I hope that you have an idea about clause 8.2, business impact analysis and risk assessment of ISO 22301-2019 business continuity management system. I sincerely thank you all for your interest and attention. Thanks and best wishes.